Hello everyone. In 1949, after the Chinese Communist Party defeated the Kuomintang, Chiang Kai-shek had to retreat to Taiwan. However, his forces still controlled nearby island chains off the Chinese coast like Hainan, Kinmen and Matsu. To fully defeat and kill off Chiang in Taiwan and prevent him from counter-attacking on the mainland, China had to capture the surrounding islands. So, in 1950, they launched fierce attacks and gained control of most of the islands. China planned to proceed straight to Taiwan after pacifying these islands. However, the Korean War broke out and China had to move most of its forces north to defend against a possible US-backed victory for South Korea. The US could then use that as an excuse to station troops near China's border and threaten it. This almost became a reality had China not directly sent hundreds of thousands of troops to help North Korea. After the war ended in 1953 with an armistice, Chinese forces returned south to complete the remainder of their goal of unification. They heavily shelled Kinmen, Dokkan and Matsu, the remaining nationalist holdouts. However, the geopolitical situation had changed. Since China fought in the Korean War, the US now saw it as the leading communist threat that needed containing. On one hand, the US Navy's 7th Fleet was sent to the Taiwan Strait to deter China from capturing the remaining islands. On the other hand, the US established the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization with France, Britain, New Zealand, Australia, the Philippines, Taiwan and Pakistan to oppose communist regimes, especially China. Facing threats from both sides and unwilling to confront the US if it used nuclear weapons, Beijing had to negotiate and accept peaceful coexistence with Taiwan. China felt humiliated by this enemy threat right on its doorstep. This is why Chairman Mao Zedong decided China must acquire nuclear weapons at all costs so the US would respect it. Ironically, the one country that could help, the Soviet Union under Nikita Khrushchev, tended to oppose Stalin's legacy, while Mao was a huge fan. Despite this difference, Mao supported Khrushchev when he faced intense domestic opposition. To repay this, the USSR helped train many Chinese nuclear scientists in Dubna near Moscow. They also taught uranium mining techniques in Xinjiang, assisted nuclear research facilities and provided a nuclear reactor. However, the Soviets did not intend to truly help China obtain nuclear weapons. They wanted to use them as leverage to control and keep Beijing forever subordinate. What they provided was limited to generating electricity, not actual bombs. China knew this and tried to gain as much knowledge as it could. In 1957, the USSR proposed to the US and UK that all three powers halt nuclear testing to reduce tensions. Warsaw Pact and NATO members should also sign a non-aggression pact. This meant Khrushchev wanted reconciliation and peaceful coexistence with the West. Mao denounced him as a fake communist. From Marx to Stalin, the West was seen as the enemy and communism existed to wage revolution against capitalism. Peaceful coexistence was tantamount to slapping yourself in the face and toppling your own ideology. Due to these ideological differences, Mao and Khrushchev could not stand each other and cooperation stalled. Finally, in 1960, the USSR withdrew all its scientists and halted nuclear assistance to China. At that point, apart from uranium enrichment technology, Beijing knew nothing about building an atomic bomb or related weapons. Khrushchev thought China could not succeed without Soviet help. However, he greatly underestimated Beijing's extremely talented scientists, many of whom were recruited from overseas in the 1950s. This included Qian Shuisun, who studied in the US and contributed to highly effective missile programs for the US military. He also worked on the Manhattan Project to build the first atomic bombs. Suspected of being a communist, he was expelled from the army in 1955. Through a prisoner exchange program with the US for captured Korean War soldiers, Qian was allowed to return to China. A Washington official once called this the stupidest thing their country ever did. Beyond Qian, there were other PhDs like Deng Jiaoshen, who earned his degree in the US, Peng Wanwu, who graduated from Scotland and worked with famed German scientist Werner Heisenberg, Zhu Guangya, who studied in Canada, and Chen Nengkuan in France. They were called the founding fathers of China's atomic bomb. In 1956, they and a group of over 30 young scientists were tasked with Project 596 to build an atom bomb, missile and satellite within 10 years to avoid being bullied by enemies. Under Mao's directive, they secretly worked despite many deadly radiation accidents and failures. Mao and the scientists only cared about results. By 1964, the first successful atomic blast occurred at Lop Nor, codenamed Project 59-6. This made China the fifth country after the US, USSR, UK and France to possess nuclear weapons. In 1966, China launched the successful Dongfeng 2 missile capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. In 1970, the Long March rocket successfully launched China's first satellite, Dongfeng Huang 1. The two bombs, one satellite project was now complete. Since then, China's defense science and technology continuously grew in strength. They were no longer so fearful of US nuclear threats like in the 1950s. Their voice carried weight internationally, forcing any enemy to be wary. In 2022, the FAS estimates China now has around 350 nuclear warheads. According to China's white paper, they will always adhere to no first use and only retaliate if attacked with nuclear weapons. China also pledges never to use or threaten to use nuclear weapons against non-nuclear countries at any time or under any circumstances. This is similar to India. Nuclear weapons are solely for deterrence and retaliation if first struck. Unlike the US, Russia, UK, France and Pakistan, China's generals will not readily use them to protect territorial integrity or when conventional weapons are inadequate. In summary, China developed nuclear weapons defensively after feeling humiliated by threats from the US military on its doorstep. For China, they are weapons of last resort for deterrence, unlike some other nuclear powers who may view first use as a legitimate option.